Okay, so this video is just made to help you study faster. You already know what's, going to happen. So let's just review the gods and goddesses. Hera is marriage, Zeus is the god of the sky and the god of the gods. Poseidon is the sea. Don't forget, even though he's not on here, Hades, the god of the underworld. He's part of the big three. The big three are Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Demeter is harvest. Athena is wisdom, and she's one of the three virgin goddesses. We'll talk about that later. Apollo is sun, music, and prophecy. Artemis is hunting, and she is probably the biggest virgin. We will definitely see how this comes into effect in one of the myths that we will read and discuss. Ares is war. Aphrodite is beauty. Hephaestus is basically a master blacksmith. Hermes is messenger of the gods. Hestia is earth and fire, and she is also one of the virgin goddesses. And Dionysus is wine, grapes, and party. And even though we don't hear about him and he's not considered one of the major gods, he is up there in importance, especially when you talk about Greek culture and how wine is significant in that culture. So now we're going to dive into the tale of Perseus. So Perseus, a young hero of Argos, is basically the protagonist in this story, and we will definitely see how he evolves and becomes more of a brave hero as the story progresses. But I'm going to try to summarize it, even though the summary doesn't seem very summarizing. I don't know. Alright, so basically, King Acrisius of Argos, his daughter is really beautiful, but he wants a son. So when he prays to the gods, Apollo tells him, remember, Apollo is the god of prophecy, so he will know, Oracle of Delphi, all in that. Apollo tells him that Acrisius will never have a son, but if he does have a son, his daughter or son will kill him. So the only way to fully prevent this prophecy would be to kill his daughter, Danae, but Acrisius fears that the gods would do to him. He fears that they would punish him and do all this stuff to him, so instead he imprisons Danae in a bronze house with a roof and guards her carefully so no one can basically reach her. However, that Zeus will come to her and impregnate her. Remember, Zeus is the god of the gods, and so he can basically do whatever he wants. And out of this affair, Perseus is born. Remember, Perseus is the protagonist. After Acrisius discovers the baby, he puts Perseus and Danae in the box and sets it out in the ocean. The box washes up on a small island where a kind fisherman, whose name is Dictys, takes Danae and Perseus in. They live happily until Dictys' brother, King Polydectes, falls in love with Danae and decides to get rid of her son, remember, Perseus. Polydectes convinces Perseus to kill Medusa, a horrifying beast with snake for hair. Perseus takes this and basically takes this challenge, knowing that maybe he will get his mother's freedom. He's visited by Hermes, who remember is the messenger god, and he gives Perseus a sword and a bunch of other little gifts and tells Perseus that he will need special equipment from the nymphs of the north. Given that Perseus nor Hermes really knew where to go, they went to go ask Atlas, the titan who held up the world. Now, basically, Atlas arranges so that if Perseus kills Medusa, he will turn him into stone. Because remember, holding up the world is not an easy task, so it's hard for him to do that. And so he says, in exchange, you have to do this. Alright, so then they go ask the Grey Woman. There are three sisters who are gray, and they share one eye among the three, and they are basically they know where everything is. It's not like anything's a real secret to them. So once they figure out where to go, Hermes helps Perseus travel there, and then they are able to arrive at Medusa's lair, and after a brief encounter with her guards, he is able to use the reflection, because remember, you can't look into Medusa's eyes to kill Medusa. Once this happens, Perseus goes back, but on the way home, he hears a voice, a beautiful voice, in what he thinks to be a beautiful voice. And he sees that a sea serpent, has taken a beautiful princess, and he is determined to free her as well. So it's kind of like Perseus is also encountering sub-missions while he is trying to achieve his overall mission. So when they come back, don't forget, Perseus takes Andromeda home, and when they return, he not only discovers that Danae and Dictys have gone into hiding because Danae refuses to marry Polydectes, but it's also Perseus. So at the end of the story, Perseus finds his mother, makes Dictys king, marries Andromeda, turns all the bad guys to stone, turns Atlas to stone to ease his job, and that's basically how the story ends. It ends in a happy tone, which is not the case in all of these stories, but for the most of them, this is. So now we're going to go into like smaller little myths, and we're going to talk about the spinning contest. Spinning contest, we have a young girl named Arachne who lives in a village, and no one knows what the village is or where it exists. And Arachne has this this talent, I guess you would say. And she's able to weave better than anyone on land. And she boasts that she is even better than Athena. And this is not wise, as you are not ever supposed to challenge a god or goddess, because you'll probably lose. However, after a long, weaving session, Athena actually loses. But as a punishment for Arachne's gloating, she turns Arachne into a spider. So this is where we get that Arachne, meaning spider. Now we're going to talk of the Hounds of Actaeon. So we have Artemis and Actaeon as the two main characters. So basically, Actaeon, a master hunter who has 50 hounds. He's very proud. He goes around hunting, killing anything he wants. The dogs are trained to automatically kill anything that moves, like stags and, the things, bears, etc., what you would think. And then one night, Actaeon holds a huge party, but after the party's over, he goes to sleep, but he hears a voice coming from the woods. And Actaeon, when he arrives, he sees Artemis nude along with some other girls bathing in a pond. Now this is where we see Artemis being really protective of her virginity. And in fact, right as Artemis sees Actaeon, she turns him into a stag, just so that her virginity is protected. She doesn't want anyone meddling with her virginity at all. And as a result of this, given that Actaeon is turned into a stag, the 50 hounds hunt him down and eventually kill him. And, would not be really nice of a way to die. So now we'll switch gears to the Judgment of Paris. And basically, we have Eris, the goddess of discord, Paris, the weak prince of Troy, who we'll see more in the Iliad, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, Hera, the goddess of marriage, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, Zeus, the god of gods and the heavens. And this is basically about the rage of Achilles. And so we will take a closer look at this now. Okay, so basically there is a beauty contest, I guess you could say. It falls on the Paris of Troy. Paris is we will find out he is kind of a weakling, but he is not ugly. He's actually decently attractive. And out of 3 goddesses, Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena, Paris chooses Aphrodite, given that Aphrodite promises him to be married to the prettiest girl or woman in the land. So, unfortunately for Paris, this woman is Helen of Sparta. Now, Helen is the wife of the king of Sparta, Menelaus. And so when Paris makes off with his prize, the Trojan War is sparked in the sense that the Greeks now are after the Trojans just because of this little incident where Paris takes the king of Sparta's wife, which is not a big deal to cause a war, but in that time I guess it was. We're not going to question the logistics of these myths, because if we were, we'd be here for a lot longer. So, anyways, the Iliad. So we have a lot of characters which we will discuss, but just to be quick, Zeus is the god in heavens and gods. Athena marriage, Athena wisdom, Hera marriage, Aphrodite beauty, Ares war, Apollo music and sun and prophecy. Thetis is the mother of Achilles. Achilles is the greatest warrior in the Greek military. Agamemnon is the leader of the Greek army. Menelaus is the husband of Helen, like we saw here. And Briseis is Achilles' wife, who was taken by Agamemnon. We'll see about that. We'll talk about it. And Chryseis is the daughter of a priest to Apollo, who's returned, sparking the conflict between Achilles and Agamemnon, and eventually starting this conflict that we will see that only escalates as the story progresses. Now, Paris, weak link of Troy, but he's a prince, so he still has something going for him. Priam is the king of Troy, Hector is the greatest prince of Troy, Helen is the wife of Menelaus, and Proclus is basically Achilles' bae. He's best friends with them. So anyways, summary. Let's talk about what happens in the Iliad. So the Trojan War is in its 9th year, and Achilles, master champion, gets into a fight with Agamemnon, basically for stealing his girl. After Achilles realizes that the troops are dying, and this deals with Apollo casting a disease upon the Greek military for basically capturing the daughter of one of the priests that praises him, Achilles thinks maybe it's a good idea to return the daughter. And so Agamemnon agrees. But then he takes Achilles' girl, I guess you'd say. And then Achilles is not alright with this, as any man wouldn't be. And he says, okay, I'm done with you and your bogus ways. I am not going to fight for you anymore. Now, this is a really big deal. Remember, Achilles is the best fighter in the Greek military. He is feared by all other militaries on the planet. He is the champion upon champions. Okay, so anyways, Achilles goes to Thetis, his mother, to inform him what happened, and then Thetis goes before Zeus and tries to seduce him in pursuit of trying to end the war early. Zeus ends up telling the Greeks to attack the Trojans, aware that they are going to lose without their champion, to attempt to end the war early. Meanwhile, Priam, the king of Troy, hears about this incident via spies and tells his son, Hector, that he must fight and gather an army. Hector says that Paris will fight Menelaus, as he is the one who started the war and it's his problem. So he is basically the weenie of the Trojans, like we mentioned, and doesn't know how to fight whatsoever. So after some time, Paris kind of gets some feel of the training, but not nearly as much as he needs. So Paris and the Trojans confront Menelaus and the Greeks. Paris and Menelaus have a rivalry again, and during a brief truce, Paris and Menelaus meet in a single combat over Helen, while the old king of Priam of Troy, watch over the city walls, and despite the goddess Aphrodite's intervention on behalf of the overmatched Paris, Menelaus is the victor. So Paris and Menelaus meet, and Paris is getting his ass whooped. But Aphrodite, being the goddess that she is, she's like, oh no, this shouldn't happen, and basically provides an escape route for Paris in pursuit of saving him. And Menelaus and the rest of the Trojans basically view this as a victory. And it is, as it is not only... Well, sorry, it's Menelaus and the Greeks. Don't forget that. Paris is part of the Trojans. But the Greeks win this as it is basically a cowardly move to escape a fight, obviously. And it was seen as kind of retreating and giving up. So they think the war is over, but they are mistaken, because Athena and the other goddesses who are basically raging over Aphrodite's intervention with Paris and stuff in the war, they're like, no, they need to see Troy burn. They want this to end really badly for Troy. So Athena makes one of the guys on the Trojan side shoot a arrow at Menelaus, and given that Menelaus is the leader, this sparks this conflict again, which seems annoying, and it is, but hey. Alright, so then we get to Iliad Part 2. So Hector, not expecting Achilles to rejoin the battle, Achilles kind of like, okay, maybe it's not that bad, maybe I'll join again. After some stuff happens with the gods, there's a big dispute, and even more gods join in, but we will see this later. Alright, so Achilles has rejoined the battle, and Hector, not knowing this, orders his men outside the walls of Troy to defend. But when the Troy army gets a glimpse of Achilles, they flee back into the cities of Troy, city walls of Troy, and they are basically ashamed of how powerful Achilles is and how unpowerful they are. So, in a dramatic duel, Achilles kills Hector. Now, this duel is so important because Hector kills Achilles' best friend, and Achilles is filled with rage. This is basically what drives him back into the fight. So then Achilles fights Hector, beats him, and then it's not enough for him. This is his best friend. Remember, they're bays, and Hector killed him. Once Achilles kills Hector, he drags Hector's body and circles around the city for 9 days. 9 days, just drags him around the city. This is a huge sign of disrespect, as he denies access to a proper funeral, which is one of the main rules in military. You have to allow and return the body for a proper funeral. But then Priam comes to Achilles and says, please, look, I just want my son to have a proper funeral. And they both agree, and then this is how the war basically ends after this. It doesn't really end, but this is all we see from the Iliad. And Achilles agrees, and Hector's corpse, or whatever is left of it, is given a proper funeral. So now let's talk about the values. We see Kleos, which is basically fame and glory. Priam wants Hector to be known for a very long time. Achilles wants to be known for a very long time as one of the great of basically ever. And now we're going to go on to Xenia, which is hospitality. So we not only see this with the adventure of Perseus, but we also see this a little bit with how the walls of Troy act as a hospitality for the entire army. Not only that, but just the gods themselves and goddesses themselves act as hospitality, protecting certain sides, which we will get to right after this. And then loyalty to the family and the king. Everyone has a side, everyone has a king, everyone's loyal to that king. We see this on both sides, not only one of them, not only Troy, even though their king is more evident than the other. So, respect for the gods. Everyone has a respect for the gods, and those who don't are obviously punished. So it's very big value that everyone has to have respect for the gods, because if they don't, just don't want to know what happened, because it's bad. So, now we talk about courage. Achilles shows an immense amount of courage. Just going back into the fight, knowing just he can do whatever he wants and totally annihilate anyone in his path. And anyone who actually was fighting in this war had a lot of courage. It's more specifically on the Greek side, as the Trojans would hide behind their walls. But I think this most applies to Achilles. So then respect for the dead. We see this towards the end, where Achilles finally says, okay, you can have this corpse, and Hector can have a funeral or whatnot. So now let's talk about the sides. This is important. Don't forget this. So, we talk about the Greeks: Menelaus, Agamemnon, Chryseis, Odysseus, Achilles, Briseis, Patroclus, and Diomedes. Now from the gods and goddesses, we have Athena, Hera, and Poseidon. From the Trojan side, we get King Priam, Prince Hector, Prince Paris, Pandarus, and from the gods and goddesses, we get Aphrodite, Ares, Artemis, and Apollo. And this is very important, as we can see who's versus who's doing what, and given that this is such a long myth and such a long story, it's important to know what's happening in it. So that is basically it. It sums up the entire, what we need to know for Wednesday. But yeah, just watch this. Hopefully you should be fine. Do some extra research if you want, but for the most part, it's good.